Okay.
All right, so we're called to session. Um, let's see, should we deal first then just with the resolution?
Makes sense.
All right. Um, so
Do we
now I'm
need,
embarrassed under the fact is that I'm not positive I have the exact resolution, the correct one.
I know.
I'm actually, I'm so screwed in the fact that I have so many emails that like when I try to search something using key terms, it's like I get 60 of anything. And you're
Well,
like,
that's the problem.
"Good
Everyone
point."
uses the same email thread over and over again, and they'll add something, they'll change something, and you don't know what's changed. But
Um,
Tim had it. Tim sent me a copy of it. And just to be sure, I also had Greg send me a copy of the final resolution.
all right, so why don't we have I guess we this do we read the title of the resolution first, and then if there's any discussion, and then we vote on it, or we discuss the resolution, then we read the title of it and put to a vote? I think the latter.
I think the latter, and then just an
Okay.
overview of why we're having this resolution, which is an amendment, really.
Yeah. So I don't know if does anyone have any comments on the resolution? Again, we're just trying to go ahead and we brought things up to date to allow for the fact that the subordinate bonds are all being sold, which is great. And it tidied up some of the other things from the rush of the final approvals leading into the sale. If anyone has any comments?
No, I thought it made sense.
All right. So then, Bernie, if you happen to have that there, do you want to just say that we'll make the motion in order to vote on this amendment? And if you just want to read the title of what the amendment is, just so we have that official.
And 1 second, I have it over here.
Could the whole amendment be read?
No.
No.
It's a resolution
Okay.
authorizing the modification of bond documents regarding the housing authority of the town of New Canaan for multifamily housing revenues, subordinate bonds, Riverwood, New Canaan. That is the title of the amendment.
All right. And
Basically, it's being changed to another subordinate bonding. And we're voting to accept it.
okay, so we have a motion to accept this. And again, Bernie, how many pages is the document?
5.
If it's 5 pages of kind of legal dense
Excuse
stuff.
me, no. The new version is 3, 4. One just my signature.
All right. So do we have a motion? Sorry, Bernie's made the motion to go ahead and accept. Do we have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye. So we have 4 in favor, 1 abstaining, and that's what I have to put on the resolution.
Correct.
Right.
Okay. So our next item deals with the budget. So I think what we'll do here is we'll go ahead and we'll do public discussion on the budget. Then we'll go to executive session, and then we'll come back in and we'll vote on we'll vote on what we're proposing for increases in public session. That makes sense to everyone?
Yep.
So you'll take us off and then give us a time frame and we'll call back in. Is that how that works?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So why don't I open up the floor?
I'll be right there.
Wendy and Cindy, do you guys want to comment?
We don't know anything to comment on.
I don't think they were provided a copy of the book.
No, but as far as
Were they?
yeah, we no, they're not, not a detailed copy of the budget, but any input or comments on, because what part of what we're considering here is the rent increases, which is where, or if you have any other concerns about the property, since this is also, a regular meeting, so. or a special meeting.
Well,
Yeah.
of course, when the rent increases, we'd like to keep it as low as possible. You know,
Good answer.
I mean, the Social Security came in at 2.5, and when that's your, that's your income, that's your income. So
Also,
when,
keep in mind that Part B went up as well.
yeah, right, Bernie,
So you're
good
getting an
point.
increase and they're taking back more part of it.
Right, right. So it,
Yeah.
it makes it tough. Makes it tough. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like we all share the goal of keeping everything as low as we can, with the one caveat being making sure that the property remains desirable and acceptable, that at least a good standard of living and a desirable place to live. And that's of course, part that we have to. That's the fighting part.
Right.
And the other thing to keep in mind too is that we're bound by financial covenants and performance covenants that that we have to be mindful of with our lenders. And we got very favorable terms, and it's what supported us to build all these units and maintain them. But you have to keep the bankers happy too. So that's always something that's factored into the budget.
Yep. No,
Yeah.
that's a good point. So, with that, again, I mean, I played around with the pro forma, and I personally didn't see anything inside of there that was outrageous. I mean, I think the increases on the expense side are all in the right realm of expectations. We've already had one or two surprises that are negative to the pro forma. And given that, I mean, I don't see a whole lot of room inside of here for a lot of, for an exceptionally low increase. Again, how did everyone else feel as they went through stuff?
Yeah,
I
I
gave
think,
you my comments in an email, which I don't want to discuss openly.
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I think in some cases, well, in most cases, I agree with you. In some cases, knowing what we've seen as far as repairs, particularly on the elevator and other things like that, our repairs numbers, I think, might be a little low, and those are essential. I mean, that impacts the quality of life in the complex. If you don't have your elevator, you don't have other things going. So I think those may be a little bit more conservative than we want to go. There's not a whole lot of wiggle room in here.
No.
Even though, COLA may be one thing, but it's obviously we don't want to increase rents any more than we have to, but we do have to make sure that we keep on with the positive way. And Westmount has certainly been doing a good job on trying to work through some of the debts and things. So we're getting a little bit better, but the debt service ratio that we have to keep up with the lenders is huge. So we have to keep that.
It's actually pretty conventional. It may be strikingly huge in some way, but it's pretty conventional.
Oh, no, the number, I didn't mean the number's huge. I meant, but the obligation is huge.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Well,
The other
I have a
thing is,
question. I just want to understand this process. I was kind of surprised. It was an eye opener to me when you mentioned legacy tenants last meeting. And I was kind of surprised by that because I was under the impression that if you're in a one bedroom, you pay one bedroom. That was kind of an eye opener for me. Like when people come in here, don't they have to pay like what I pay?
There's inside of any rental situation, there's slight variances that come up for a variety of reasons. We were stuck when we were doing the redevelop. When you redevelop a project that has taken federal money, you are stuck with a whole bunch of hair that is a reason a lot of stuff doesn't get redeveloped. And we have a situation at Millport where there was existing tenants in the housing that was going to be redeveloped, and they were paying rents that were substantially different than modern rents.
Right.
Quite frankly, the units that were there didn't deserve a lot more than what they were paying.
Agreed.
But you can't end up, and as a quick aside, I just finished Robert Moses, the biography of Robert Moses, the guy in New York City and the power broker. And what he used to do in New York City was he'd evict everyone from affordable housing, then build new affordable housing. And meanwhile, people would be, their lives would be destroyed as they're kicked out of their houses and can't find a place to live. And he actually was pretty much the cause of a lot of the laws that give these added protections to people in housing from being kicked out for redevelopment for affordable housing. And so that's where this comes up. And so we've been bringing people back up to the levels that equal. So we don't, if you could imagine, and I'm just making these numbers up, so these aren't real numbers, but scope of magnitude, it's not too far off. If somebody was paying $100 a month before, and all of a sudden you want to jack them up to $1,000 a month, that's not going to work. I mean, it just the math doesn't work for the people. However, over a period of time, hopefully it does work, and or the people can find an alternate housing situation.
Okay.
But that's just what that's what we're dealing with.
So if somebody comes in, if like I have someone in town who's asking me, who has a teacher from Fairfield who's interested in coming in here as a 1-bedroom. And I know that's the bane of your existence and you love 1-bedroom people. So anyway, I'm quoting what I'm paying, and then I'm wondering, wait a minute, is that going to be what the rent is? I mean, because now I'm confused.
Yeah, no, she would be plus or minus. There's other stuff where we get into like the utility allowances and then income levels, and there's other stuff that make it plus or minus. But everyone who comes in new is basically plus or minus what everyone else is.
Okay, thanks, Scott. That helped. That's very helpful.
You bet.
I don't want to be given misinformation. That's why I was so surprised by that. Well, you'll see the article.
Yeah, and imagine something in the press not being quite right. I can't believe it. No, and it's a good point. And again, it's good that we explain this every once in a while. So any other comments for open session under the budget, or?
Well, isn't it a little bit of a zero-sum game in that, to the extent we try to be overly reasonable, if you will, this year, at some point in the future, it's going to come back. This is real estate. It deteriorates over time. It's a wasting asset. And one way or the other, we have to have the cash available. And if we have it available on a current basis, it saves money over a longer term basis. And all of that is for the tenant's benefit.
And I tend to agree in that. Look, if we're over by 1% this year, then we can always return another 1% next year. But if we're under by 1%, then next year we probably need to get an extra 2 to 3% because something else would have happened and we would be in even worse shape. And now we're trying to catch up. And there's very seldom good times for anybody, but there are particularly bad times. And if there was a financial collapse and like in 2008 or something, and that was in the year before we hadn't done an appropriate raise, and then we had to hit everybody during the worst of times. So, it's, I think, the reasonable, responsible, again, going crazy isn't right because it's not fair to the current tenants, but I don't think anything that we're proposing is crazy.
No, I think it's a skinny budget, and no, if this were a market budget in a commercial realm, I think we see a lot more capital, sinking funds and set asides, which always leaves us in the same position every year that we have a skinny budget, and then something goes wrong, and it's a fire drill. Somehow it seems to work out. We seem to be able to put a Band-Aid on and get to the next year, but and that's just a general observation that ideally it'd be nice to be able to set aside a lot more money as we're going along, and not wait for the sort of Damocles to come down on us.
Well, and I'd say if we didn't have, I'll call it sort of emergency access to town funds, and the slightly some reserve Hank funds, I would say that look, we got to go even higher than what we're talking about. I mean, I think with the emergency access, that allows us that safety that, again, if something does go wrong, we're not in a bad spot. But I agree that, I mean, if this was a commercial property, we would likely have to go up with much higher rents. Well, obviously we'd have higher rents anyway, but our increase would have to be much higher.
Yeah, I mean, just on the capital reserve part of it, not the whole economic model.
Yeah. Right. All right. Any other comments under public, or should we go to executive for a little bit? Bernie, how long do you, if you had to project under executive, 10, 15 minutes?
Well, based on what I have to say, I need about 5. I don't know about anybody else.
Well, what? Would
5 or 10, 15.
Why not say 15?
Well, tell you what, Cindy and Wendy, why don't you give us 10 minutes, and we apologize if we might be up to like 5 minutes late. If
Okay,
that's
and then we'll just be waiting to be allowed in after.
All right.
After 10
Yeah,
minutes or so.
Yeah, I think that works
Okay.
out right.
Oh, yeah, Scott,
Yeah.
more than fine. That's fine.
Yeah, so Bernie, they can go, they can be in the waiting room, correct? Once they get
I
off.
have to figure out how to put them back in the waiting room.
No, they're gonna drop, but when they come back, they'll be in the waiting room, so we can let them in.
Okay, so I'll have to call back in then.
Correct.
Yeah.
So great. So Cindy and Wendy, if you drop now, that's great.
Okay.
It's about 5:52. Yeah, if you come back a little bit after 6 or something, and then again, we'll let you in as soon as we're done.
Okay, thanks,
Thank you.
Scott. Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay.
guys.
Okay.
Bye.
Right, Bernie is pause recording.
Just give me a minute.
Yep.
Hello.
Okay, 10 minutes, you're back in.
Thanks,
Thank
Bernie.
you.
And Bernie, you want to hit the record again?
I did.
Thank you, sir. Way ahead of us. All right, so let me see if in summarizing some of our discussions here, given again the tightness as to what we're thinking as far as increases in costs, and also I think one of the things we didn't talk about under executive, which is good to talk about here too, is that in looking at the capital, the longer term capital requirements, that report was rather alarming. I think it was intentionally meant to be alarming, and I don't think we'll come close to those numbers, but it's good we won't come close to those numbers because we can't fund those numbers. We got to do entirely differently to get there. So I think the discussions are going from a rent rate, an increase in rents ranging from a 3% up to a 5%. Was anyone thinking that we needed to go higher than a 5%?
No.
All right. No. And I think the issues that come up under a 3%, I'm not positive where that puts us as far as our debt coverage. I believe in looking at the spreadsheet, we end up being at a 1.2 at 5%.
Right.
And our covenants are 1.1. So I mean, we can't go below the 1.1. And again, for some unknown reason, my spreadsheet does not update after I change numbers, which kind of defeats the whole point of the spreadsheet doing this. And I know there's some sort of button that allows that to happen, but it's not where it's supposed to be. So with that, I mean, if we were to go ahead and, a 1% drop in budget is roughly $14,000 on the revenue side, which is roughly 10% of our cash flow. So am I correct in my interpretation that we're at a, about a 130 to a 140, we'll call it surplus after debt service of 130 to 140 at 5%? Anyone able to confirm that, or?
I can't bring it up because I just don't know how to do it with
At a 5% rent increase?
I think so.
Yeah, I think we're at wasn't that the last calculation? There's 140, 146.
Okay. But the 146 is, if that's at 5, then knock 14 off of that, and you get down to a 130. And the 130 should end up being below, that should, in theory, I think, knock our debt service down into like the low teens.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by the low teens?
I'm sorry, the low 1.1,
1.1,
1.4.
I have a question. last year we had the 3%. And so I took my base rent and I times it by the 3%. And I got exactly what the figure Amy gave me. I mean, I didn't see any kind of, um, for the utility allowance that went up, even though my utilities all went up. So it worked out exactly to the 3%. There was no extra utility allowance. How does that all factor in? I mean, am I looking at I'm going to get raised to anywhere from 3 to 5, but yet there's no increase in that utility allowance?
Cindy, unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that. Hopefully, Amy can end up explaining that better. I mean, I don't know, Peggy, do you have a better idea as to how the utility allowance is calculated?
I believe I was seeing where they were doing a recalculation of the utility allowances and not not just I just saw it in the press that they were looking at recalculating them and reconfiguring them when the next rent renewals come up.
And I
So I
think the
think
utility
Amy
allowance.
will be dealing with that when you come in for your renewal.
Oh, actually, and forgive me under this. This is one of the other terrible things. How does the utility allowance affect? I mean, the utility allowance can lower the rent for various tenants, correct?
Right.
And where does that show up in this budget?
I think it's an estimation of sort of continuation. I mean, I don't know that Rick has done per tenant, you know, but he's looking
No.
at the rentals and the units. Um,
I'm just wondering where that shows up because that's actually that's a problem because I mean with the utilities, you know, thanks to the state of Connecticut, I mean the electricity rates went way up. However, of course, assistance for lower income tenants actually, you know, likely also went way up. I mean, in other words, like if we is what I'm trying to get at, and I don't know if anyone knows the answer to this one, but let's say that the utility allowance goes up by $200 for a tenant. Does their rent drop by? Does the rent that Housing Authority receives drop by around 200?
Mine didn't.
I think it depends on the program that you're on.
Yeah.
Well, I'm in the tax credit, and my rent is exactly what you guys publish.
Right. The tax credit units, I think not. I think the Section 8 ones, it does impact. That's where,
But I do get a utility allowance, don't I, Peggy?
yeah, I can't speak. I don't know for sure, Cindy.
Yeah, that's what I was told.
Yeah, Sydney, the utility allowance is one of the things that plays differently under the income side of stuff. And I'm not positive how that calculus works. Okay, so with that, I guess then the discussion comes down to 3, 4, or 5. Do we want to vote on the 3 independent, or do we vote for just sort of state? Do we want to do a quick straw poll, or
A quick straw poll and then have a motion might be the way to go.
all right? Bernie, would you care to start?
I'm sorry.
Sorry, would you care to start with? We're just doing a quick straw poll as to what people think that the increase should be.
I say 2.5 to 3%.
Peggy?
I think 4.
Tim?
5.
Mike?
Yeah, I think it's 5. I don't think there's any way around it. I mean, I feel terrible about it, but just go to the supermarket, my own business here, and we're starting the budget process. I mean, it's terrible what's been going on the last few years, but I think we have a fiduciary duty to take in enough money that is prudent, and I end up at 5. I would. It's an interesting point you made though about how the utility allowance works and how Rick may have it plunged into the numbers. If he does, it might be something we should ask maybe at the next meeting or at some point. I'm curious how that works, but yeah, I wrote 5.
I think in mine, I mean, like I just went over our health plan today, and we got a 20% increase.
Oh,
We
God.
started at 28%, and we got it down to 20. And I think insurance wise, again, we're going to continue to see this disaster across disaster. And again, I remain shocked by the long-term capital plan report, which again points out that we're going to need a lot more capital a long time. So and unfortunately too, as we end up switching out apartments, I'm always amazed at what a couple bad tenants can do to this overall property. And it stinks that everyone
Excuse
bears
me,
the
will the
burden of
person that just entered the meeting please identify yourself? If you don't
Tom,
identify yourself, I'll close the meeting.
it. I think it's
Tom?
But
Tom's
there's
ST.
Wendy's here and Cindy's here, so I don't know.
There's also a Tom SC.
Tom, would you please identify yourself? If you can't, then we're gonna have to terminate you from the meeting.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, Tom Little. I actually went to town hall and there was no meeting there. So, yeah, I didn't realize this was a Zoom meeting. So I decided to try to listen to the meeting.
Okay. Thank you,
Who
Tom.
are you? Identify yourself. I need that for the minutes.
Tom Little.
Tom Little.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Are you a tenant? Are you a member of the public?
I'm a resident at Canaan Parish.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So I guess then that given the straw poll under the 5 being it, then I guess we end up, again, under a quick discussion, for Peggy and Bernie, do you want to try to counter under the 5, or do we put a 5 up for a vote, or happy to discuss a little bit more, a little bit longer?
I would like to get some information on the utility allowances and how it's handled for different.
I would too, because I'm paying exactly what y'all publish. So I would
Yep.
really want to know that, because I was under the impression I got some sort of deal through that. And now I'm thinking I'm getting actually nothing, no utility allowance, which is a little disconcerting considering that's what I was told.
Well, we'll put in a request under that one to figure
Thanks,
out
Scott.
again what this is. And
Thanks. I appreciate that, Scott.
So yeah, I think Peggy and Bernie, if you guys want to comment and again try to come up with any other arguments or something, then please feel free under this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the four, it just puts us back on shaky ground, but it I can see the 5. I can see the need for the 5. It's just hard. Particularly for folks that aren't on vouchers and things like that.
Bernie, any further comments?
My only comment was I felt the 3% would be fair.
Yeah. All right. Unfortunately, I think we need to come to a vote on this. So why don't we go ahead and I'll throw out there. Well, the two options are, well, I guess actually it has to be, do we have a motion in order to raise the rent by 5%?
I'll move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Mike? All in favor of raising 5%? If we have them 4, all opposed?
Opposed.
All right, so we end up with a 4-1 in favor. And again, I think we all wish that it could be something lower than that. And I appreciate everyone's comments on it. And again, we'll keep working with Rick in order to try to keep expenses as low as we can. All right. Do we have any other business? Actually, not that we can even necessarily do any other business, but Is that it from the agenda, Bernie?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. In that case, can we have a motion to dismiss? Adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Bernie. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Appreciate you coming and listening in. Tom, I'm sorry about confusion about town hall in person or Zoom. And I'll let Westmount know, and I'm writing a quick note under utility allowances too. Okay.
Good night, everyone. Have a good Thanksgiving.
Thank you,
Okay,
everyone.
you too, Bernie.
Thanks, Bernie.
Bye-bye.
Have a good
Thank
one,
you.
everyone.